you want to lead us in?
Yeah, sure.
Hello, and welcome back to episode number 4 of the Biblical Banter podcast. Today we're going to be speaking on spiritual gifts. So this came from the Instagram question that we put out, saying if there's anything that you want to hear. One of those was about spiritual gifts. More specifically, it is on healing, speaking in tongues, and prophecy. So gonna be a bit of a tight episode. I've been looking forward to it, but at the same time, I know I'm gonna get some absolute backlash for some things. But
yeah, I'm expecting to get more backlash than you, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, so we'll be all right. We'll be all right.
Right, what we'll go to do first?
So we'll start off with prophecy. Sure, that seems to probably be
I feel like that's one we
more of an easier one to start off with.
Maybe.
I'd say so.
Okay, right. So before we get into the prophecy, we say spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
Let's have a real think about what that even means to begin with. Okay. Not to do it. It depends what you mean by, but we'll have to. So, are we talking about in this episode when you walk in the church that the spiritual gifts manifest during the sermon and people start going nuts and knowing all this? Or are we talking about an in general thing granted to people over time?
In general thing that's been granted to you.
Right. Okay.
From, like, you have been born and that is your gift.
Born to have the gift seems a little...
No, well, obviously you're born to have the gift because at the end of the day,
wait, so
your life has been planned out from the start.
Is that not predestination?
Yeah, but we're not going to get into that at all.
Well,
I'm staying away from that for this episode. Completely on. No.
Dan will have to do it that way. For me, if I'm talking about it, I'm talking about it's been granted to you later in life.
Yeah, but he knew it was going to happen anyway. But we'll not get into that. So
we're not getting into that. That's probably the next episode. Right, prophecy then. So, start us off with that. Have you any actual examples of prophecy and things that you might want to maybe go through first? I feel like I've more to say about the other two than this one, to be honest.
Right. So, prophecy, you see more Old Testament.
Aye.
Right. Obviously, with Jesus being born, prophecy. And basically everything that is went on from that. So it'll be like what Jesus was going to do whenever he came here. Everything before that, obviously before Jesus came here, is prophecy, which a majority of that has been fulfilled so far. Which there's a stat for that, which I'll actually want to look up later on, which is like the stat of like the likelihood or like what is the chance of Jesus even fulfilling one of those prophecies. And which is like, it's so crazy. It's like 1 to like the 19th power or something like that. It's crazy. But it, like,
so anyway, we're talking more when you show like more Old Testament stuff as well as Isaiah 53. Is it that's one of the ones that really goes deep into Jesus? Like,
wouldn't know off the top of my head.
Coming down. Yeah.
But yeah, so whenever I hear prophecy, I think more Old Testament, and stuff that has already been prophesized. So anything that's in the Bible, I think that's there. So whenever I go into this sort of gift of prophecy, I don't think it is something that is as big anymore, or is something that is as well known or is heard of as much. Yeah. Everything that is meant to be prophesied has already been prophesied, and it's already written there. You can like read it in the Bible, like from Old and New Testament. It's either happened or it is going to happen. So I don't think prophecy is a big thing anymore. Not to say that it's not something. You gave me an example there not too long ago. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it was something to do like a nun or something like that.
Yeah, do the Saints and
yeah, so it was something to do with that. So not to say that prophecy can't be a thing anymore. I just think it's something that's not going to be really heard of as much, because everything that is meant to happen has already been said about, and it's there. So if it is prophecy, let's say it's not going to be much as like a big of a deal.
The thing is like I have you hear some things about and the saints and stuff, no problems. I have no real good examples for prophecy. I'm more focused on the other two for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Where you have heard where, like, maybe sometimes the church direction or things that might happen can be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I haven't particular examples. I do know the one you're on about, but I can't even remember it myself.
Yeah.
But, okay, do you think if I go to a local church right now, a sermon could be going nuts, really good, really well, and someone could just instantly start sparking off prophecy? Like,
well, I think it could happen because I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's not really on us. So if something needs to be said and something needs to be brought up, if there was at some certain point, certain message that was being spoken in church or whatever, and it's to do with the current times or something, and someone was to come up with something, fair enough, it might be true, but you need to be careful.
I guess you can't.
Because you like some bloke just came off a 6-week term in Hollywell. He's went to church.
Yeah,
that's a very like out there example, but you know what I'm trying to say.
No,
it's like you need to be careful with that, and leading into that as well. It's like people. So it's going to go into. I'm going to go so sort of like a wee side step from prophecy, where it's like dreams.
Right, yeah,
you need to be very careful if someone like you can have this really like in detail dream. Like I have them all the time. Like it's just something that I have like these really detailed dreams, or I honestly feel like I'm there. Doesn't mean it's prophecy.
No.
So you need to be very careful in terms of...
And that's not to say as well, like, you can see in the Bible, there's so many people get prophecy through visions and dreams.
Yes.
But they are distinct and they're known, you know.
Yeah.
And I think as well...
there's usually a follow-up from that dream as well. It's not like you get the dream and then that's it.
Yeah.
People that have, like, had those dreams or whatever, they were then visited by an angel or like, they were, like...
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like...
what about, right, this might be interesting to watching. What about someone who's convicted in the spirit, say, to make a left turn instead of a right turn, and then they find out that if they had turned left, they would have been in the 4-car pileup or something.
So you
hear people come off of that all the time. You mean
like I've got a gut feeling I should go right instead of left?
Well, we'll have to. Let's say it wasn't a gut feeling. Do you know what I mean? Here, I'm not saying that this happens much. I'm just asking you, what do you think of that? Because you hear that a lot. You hear that in churches all the time, especially people with better testimonies and stuff. You can hear some people say, "I felt convicted by the Spirit to do Vaughn," and then this did or didn't happen.
Right. Well, I'm going to take a left or a right turn out of the equation because that really whittles it down to like.
But you don't know
nothing. But
well, if you turn left and get hit with a blimp, but if you turn right, you reach the cinema.
Well, if you turn left and get hit by a blimp, then that wasn't to happen. In my eyes, like.
Oh yeah, predestination.
Yeah. So like.
Yeah. Which we're not getting into in this episode, apparently.
No, we're not. So it's like I think people can be taken by the Spirit to do things. Yes. Right? But if it is
mini prophecy.
But
that's what I'm saying. It's an instance of mini prophecy.
No.
If it's like do that. It's like, okay.
No.
Well, I suppose it's an in moment good decision maybe. I suppose it's not really
prophecy. Yeah. Because I mean like I'll be like going to God in prayer and hitting him with I don't know what path I should take. Like give me guidance, help me in this. Mm-hmm. And then you've been praying about it days, weeks, doesn't matter how long it's been or whatever. And then eventually you come to this conclusion of this is the right, I'm feeling like convicted, this is the way that I need to go. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's like, say, you're going to do a mission team or something like that. So if you're going to, let's put it out for an example, right? You've got 2 different mission teams. One's to go to Dublin.
Or you could just
right or left turn. No. Right, so right or left turn, you're going to Dublin or you're going to South Africa.
Aye, but there could be
an
explosive blimp in the way in one way. You don't know about it.
Right, that's nonsense, right? So, left or right turn, you're going to Dublin for a mission or you're going to South Africa for a mission, right? A lot of people are going to be like, I want to go to South Africa, like Dublin's only down the road. If you pray about it and you're getting convicted to be like, actually, no, I'm just going to stay here and go local, Like, I think that can be a thing.
Yeah, probably.
Everyone's first reaction whenever they're like, you've got the chance to go to South Africa, or you've got the chance to go down to Dublin, which you can go down to any other day of the week. I think that is one of those things where it's like, if you pray about it and you're sitting, you keep coming back to like, oh no, just go to Dublin. That's your answer.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, for if any random person just claims to have prophecy as a gift, or really any of the spiritual gifts on this list, I'm not going to have very popular opinions here. I think that it's kind of brave of them to say they do. Like, I mean, to get really any gift, as they're referred to as, you would need to be living ridiculously righteously. You would need to be on the right track, and you would only be given that for a very specific reason, assuming you would even know what to do with it or how to actually act with it if it was granted to you.
So you're saying it more as it's not something you walk day to day with, it's something that you get in the moment?
No, I don't know about this. I don't believe for a second you're born with a gift of prophecy. I think that's insane.
Right.
But I think that you could be given it for a very, very specific reason, because you see it in the saints and stuff. But I just don't see. I don't see how, like. Yeah. Well, it's not like it's a particularly massive thing where like loads of churches are going, we just prophesize the stock.
And that's why I'm saying it's very rare.
It's very rare. This is why it's hard to talk about this one, because of this one.
And that's why I wanted to start off with.
Yeah, so
because it's more of a one where you can be like, yeah, it's not really much of a thing anymore. Like, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't really have much more to say on that.
No, yeah.
So, I just think if it does happen, it's rare and it will be happening through the saints, which you don't agree with, but that's fine.
So prophecy is only by the saints. So if someone gets a prophecy, they're a saint.
Well, I would say that probably that's going to end up being the case. Yeah. Like, I mean, you'd have to be living righteously and all to even get a prophecy. Like, that's insane.
Right.
Or maybe someone could get it and then that'll lead them on to a life where they become saintly, possibly. I don't know, something like that. But I don't know. I think it's one of those ones you have to be really careful with, and I'd be very skeptical of any one turnaround.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's very rare. If you were to go up to any church and be like, I've had this vision and this is what's going to happen, they're going to look at you and be like, are you well? Are you okay?
That depends on what church you go to be fair.
Are you well? Yeah, I went well. Oh, okay.
So
swiftly moving on
before we get in trouble. What do you think of should we do healing or tongues? I think
healing next, please. Thank you. That's my next category.
I have some really fun things to talk about with the tongue. Okay, healing. Not to harken back to your previous episode or anything, but let's speak again. This is why I kind of think we need to define this gift as it's claimed to be. You will see this nonsense in the charismatic churches of people being healed on the front rows and all this here. We're not talking about that when we talk about the gift of healing.
No, we're talking about actual healing.
An actual instance of a miracle.
Yes.
Performed by someone.
Yes.
So if you look at the apostles and Paul, they were doing this all the time.
Yes.
This was very normal. Early church, they were performing miracles while they were spreading the gospel, getting the church built up.
Yeah.
So obviously, I would say that again. I'll lean it back into the saints. I can actually use an example last time. There's a saint called Valor Spiridon, and he was known to have actually healed quite a few people.
Right.
Yeah. And also recent saints and stuff.
Right. So whenever I hear this, the gift of healing, right, is it likely that you can go to someone as a deaf man and you can then all of a sudden hear? Not as likely this day and age.
No.
Not as likely. Can it happen? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Whenever I hear healing and whatnot, I don't feel that you need to be going to someone that has a gift of healing. I think anyone can go to God in prayer and be like, pray for someone. Say they've got a bad knee. Say they've got gammy legs, they've got like whatever's going on with them who like came down with like cancer or something like that. I think that anyone can pray for you, and that is just as good. You don't need to go to like a specific healing. Should you still go to the hospital and go to the doctors and get chemotherapy?
I'm not saying that any of the scenes were like healers. That's not what I mean. I mean, like, they perform miracles, like literally like Paul and all, and who are saints.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the difference between back then and now.
No, but I wouldn't say there is a difference.
Yeah, there is, because it doesn't happen as much anymore. When was the last time that you heard of someone magically becoming hearing from being deaf?
Well, not in Northern Ireland.
That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. Like the likelihood and the rarity of someone all of a sudden becoming full of hearing, full seeing, sight after being blind or something like that. Can it happen? Yes. Is it rare? Yes.
Well, I mean,
speaking in terms of illness, though,
even in the age of like the early church, it may be easy to say, well, it was common then, but I don't think it was. Like, I mean, what, you had 12 apostles?
Yeah.
That's 12 people in the whole world that can do these things. So I wouldn't say it's any more rare or less rare now. I mean, like,
yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
yeah.
For someone
you're reading it out of one book, which is like
which is focusing on the things.
Get you? Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it is rare, but can it happen? Yes. Yeah. What I'm trying to get at is more. Well, I'll say minor stuff, but stuff that is less black and white. So you've got an illness. We'll take a terminal illness, say cancer, right? You go, you pray about it, like whatever, and you've seen it before. These people that are like they're terminally ill, they've prayed about it, they've done whatever people have prayed for them, and then all of a sudden this cancer that was like, oh, you've only got certain time left, all of a sudden it's just gone.
This has been known to happen.
Yeah,
there's actually
it's just gone.
There's one name, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was literally that exactly. Yeah.
So I want to also say it's like, as much as praying for it's good, you still go to a hospital. Like don't be just reliant. Like, because I've also heard of people who have been like, oh, I'm not going to hospital. I got to rely on the power of prayer, and you're like,
no. I mean, like, there's.
See, it's great that you've got that faith, but at the end of the day, like, a bit of chemotherapy's not going to hurt. Like,
well, the thing is,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're doing. No, the thing is, like, with this kind of stuff, with healing stuff, like, we should not be going to church and praying in the hopes to see visible signs of miracles. I think we need to get that very, very clear.
Yeah.
Being a Christian is not about your life getting easier. Being a Christian is not.
Like, it's harder.
It does get harder. And just look at the lives of the apostles. Like, all of them met like gruesome deaths. Like,
I literally saw this like literally half an hour before you came here, and I was like going through them. It's just like, it was the crucifixions. It says beheaded or clubbed to death.
Yeah, no, it's bad.
One sawed in half. Like, come on now.
No,
that's not easy. And then it went on to like more sort of near examples, and it was like people that were in Middle Eastern countries. Can't remember the exact one, so I'm going to say Middle Eastern countries. Some terrorist organization, forget who it was, but they were like beheading children or something like that because they wouldn't like turn away, like they wouldn't like denounce God, and they're like, bit nuts. And then there's a whole new thing with China as well, but sure, whatever. That's going off topic.
I feel like whenever we talk about healing and gifts, and the reason why I bring it up in this regard, it's church is not there to go in and be seeking these spiritual experiences. You're not going in to see a miracle. You're not going in. You're there to worship. Yeah. Okay, you're there, and that is the main point. And we need to understand that if even the apostles could go through a lot of pain and suffering, we cannot assume that we're not going to have to do that too. And so while a miracle can happen, obviously, in my opinion, more so through the saints and things like that, certainly as well through the power of prayer, especially if you have other people praying for you at the same time as well. That's great. But just because it doesn't happen doesn't mean God doesn't love you or isn't merciful or anything like that. That's not the point. For some reason, if you're not healed, which is so rare to begin with anyway, there's a purpose for that. Something good will come out of it at the end.
Yep.
Which people don't like to hear. Which I know because, I've seen family members of mine die, and we've all had our troubles and our pains.
I'm going to say a great example, which is it's sad to hear, obviously, but there's so much good that's came out of it. There's this new guy, forget his name, I think his name's Ashley Kane. Had a daughter, and she had a really bad illness or whatever, died whenever she was still a baby, basically. Obviously distraught man, busted him. But I've been following him through that path or whatever, and see the amount of stuff that he has done after that in terms of charity work and basically doing things to raise money for the cause of whatever illness it was that his daughter had or whatever. Astounding. He's done more for that cause than anyone else has done on this planet. He rode in a rowboat for miles, he's cycled, he's done bloody Ironman, triathlons, you name it, he's on it. To me, that is not to say that it's this happens so that you could do this.
Yeah.
It's more to say as much as it is such a bad situation for you personally in your life to happen, so much good has still came from it. He, realistically, he could have, that could have happened to him, and what you see is this devastating thing that has happened, and people turn to, drugs and alcohol, and just go down this big, dirty slope. But he's in, do you know what, this has happened, it's awful for me, but I'm going to do what I can to help other families and better other people's lives. And maybe if I do so much of this, someone else might be able to get treatment that they wouldn't have been able to get, or whatever, just for example. But I think that's just a great example in terms of
no, it's about an example.
Where it's just because you haven't been healed doesn't mean there's nothing good that's going to come from it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, God has your salvation in mind. That's part of the point.
Yeah.
And from the bad stuff that happens in our lives, He can get good out of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you see that that's pretty much everything that happens in the Bible is that it's really bad things happening, good kind of literally the death of Jesus.
Yeah.
The crucifixion. That was look at the suffering that God Himself put Himself through.
Yeah. We were actually talking about that in BB on Thursday there, just Thursday past, and it's Jesus. You see Jesus is praying and being is there any other way? I don't want to be doing this. He's obviously distraught. He says he's sweating blood. Whatever. Obviously something that he didn't want to do. And then God's nah, you got to do it. And he's okay, I'll do it.
And there's something to be said in that. It was you only do God's will, if you put that forward.
Yeah.
I think as well, what we're really brushing up against here is what's known as the problem of suffering. It's a very, very uncomfortable topic. It's actually
something that atheists will bring up all the time.
Oh yeah, the first thing
why is there so much suffering?
If God exists, then
because you're a sinner.
Why does this happen? Why does this happen? Why did my dog die? It's just right.
Because your dog's old.
What I don't get though is
sorry, that was
what I don't get though is if you actually read the Bible, you would notice that question is always being answered throughout the entire book.
Yeah,
the entire book is the answer. It's very, very difficult. But that's why I just wanted to bring that up, not to completely take us away from speaking about the gifts, but it's important to note that I don't want people going, oh, it can happen. So why is it not happening to me? You know, and it's like, yeah, it can happen, but that's not why we're, you as a Christian, you can make sense of suffering.
Yeah.
That's a better way of putting it. And you can be joyful knowing that, you know, God's with you and he loves you.
Think about the amount of people have suffered in life, but at the end of the day, they came out of it and they're now like these motivational speakers. Not like I'm a big fan of motivational speakers because half of them just talk absolute dribble, but there is a few of them that have came out of some bad holes and they've been like, they're changing lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like they were on a very dark path at one point and then all of a sudden, like,
yeah, and again,
you're doing good. But I do recommend going and seeing, like, looking up that boy Ashley Kane. Yeah. I don't know if he's religious of any kind. I think he is, but don't quote me on it. But he's still doing a very good cause, and I'll check him out.
Yeah.
Cool guy. He's a cool beard.
Beard.
One of the things he actually said about his beard was he doesn't want to cut his beard. No. He says, I'm not cutting my beard. And I forget, he was on like some show or whatever.
I think he was an Orthodox person.
And he's like, I'm not cutting my beard. And the guy goes, why? He goes, because my daughters touch these hairs. And I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, oh my days. But it's like, it's pretty cool.
No, it is.
It's a very good cause. And he's a very,
he does that.
Very wholesome man. He's recently got a PhD gifted to him.
Yeah?
Yeah, so he's now a doctor.
Fair enough.
For like, do you know what you just get like if you do so much for like a certain thing, like you just get a random doctorate thrown at you.
I
like,
did not know that.
Yeah, it's like I forget the actual name of it, but it's like, got to look it up now. Hold on, it's gonna annoy me. Like if I don't look this up, it's gonna annoy me. Hold on. An honorary. Yes, so. You've done so much for a certain like charity.
I was about to say you can't just become a doctor.
No, so it's like you've done so much for like a certain cause or something like that, right? And then like they'll give you like an honorary PhD and like whatever. So like he's now Dr. Kane for doing charitable work in some ways.
No, sounds like it's well deserved.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Shall we move on to speaking in tongues?
I guess it needs to happen.
It does, and I have a lot to say.
Right, well, you kick us off then.
Right, okay, so speaking in tongues. So what does this mean? So, in the Bible, and in the lives of certain saints, speaking in tongues meant this. There's...
I hope you've got verses to back us up now.
What do you mean? It does happen in Acts or something. It does. It's in there somewhere.
Right.
It meant this. You speak one language, but even though you're speaking it, someone in another language is speaking theirs, and you can converse. There's a certain saint I had in my mind, and he did that very thing. Can't remember what his name was. There's a famous saint in the Orthodox tradition, often referred to as the saint in the fireplace, and she could actually be able to like know people's names as they approached. Now I don't know if she could speak in tongues, but that's what it meant. It was a functional thing that would happen. It was blessed to someone so that, you know, when someone actually, like, it's a need, it's like meeting a need. It's like, how are you going to address a crowd of people, especially like say like the old school apostolic times? How are you going to preach to the entire crowd if all you could speak is one language?
Mm-hmm.
And that gift of tongues would obviously be there so that you could speak in another person's language and teach and preach. And as I say, just literally lives of how many saints that could go into it.
Yeah.
But what we have now, when we say speaking in tongues, in charismatic churches especially, is this absolutely pathetically ridiculous idea that, I'm sure you've seen that, especially the Kenneth Copeland types. They just literally speak this random gobbledygook language, and apparently them and God understand what they're saying. And apparently, if you have the gift of tongues as well, you can also understand what they're saying, even though it's complete nonsense.
That's different gift.
What do you mean?
That's interpretation. It's different.
That's just stupid. So that's pretty much it. You'll see this, if you look this up, Kenneth Copeland speaking in tongues, you see it. He's like standing in front of a whole crowd of people, just literally making gibberish noises. He's obviously sat and practiced it so that he could trick everyone. And this as well, this is another big problem with this, especially in the charismatic churches, is again, you're not going to church to hear a random gobbledygook language and to have these ridiculous spiritual experiences and people falling over themselves and pretending they can understand what they're hearing. That is absolutely ridiculous. It's blasphemous, to be honest. And it's completely antithetical to the gospel, in my opinion. So, speaking in tongues is ridiculous. Being able to speak in your own language and be understood in your own language when it comes up in a time that makes sense, especially in the lives of the saints, makes sense. But absolutely not a complete charismatic crap, to be honest. Now I've got a feeling you've got different things. I've got a feeling that.
Yes, here we go. Right. So beforehand, right, before I started looking at this, right, I would have had a very similar opinion that.
Yeah, but if Kenneth Copeland did
Would you let me talk?
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not talking about Kenneth Copeland. Let's put down. I was looking up. Sorry, sidetrack autism. Right. I looked up his net worth.
Oh, what is it?
You should have seen it.
How much?
He gets $2 million a year.
That's insane.
That's to go up next year to $2.8 million.
You know, I'm not surprised. I thought it would be more than that.
But that's not his net worth, obviously. That's obviously what his annual salary is $2.8 million a year.
Sure, fun fact.
Another guy who's worse than him. Mm-hmm. There is a man worse. Joel Osteen.
Oh, Osteen, yeah, he's really bad. He's the one.
His net worth
yeah,
is $1 trillion.
No way he can't be that rich.
$1 trillion. I looked it up and it said it was like, look it up. His net worth is 1,000 million. Which is in America is classed as $1 trillion in there. Billion. Not trillion. Billion.
The same
trillion. 1 billion. So 1,000 million. His net worth is 1 billion.
Yeah, he's the one as well. He gets everyone to hold up their Bibles and do this prayer room at the start where he'll be like, everything you're about to hear is true and from the gospel. Yeah. And he talks about it like crap.
Yeah. It's just like his house is 70,000 square feet. Mansion. Disgusting behaviour. But I'll get into that because then I was on a rant with my mum the other day and she was sort of sitting there just nodding her head because I was just going off on an absolute tangent being like, this is disgraceful. Give that money to church. Give that money to charity. You don't need a private plane or 5 of them.
I know, but you do know that these people know that. They're not Christians. They've just fooled a bunch of people who are gullible.
Don't like them. But anyway, you were speaking on, right, that your translation, right, that speaking in tongues was for men, right? That was for, not so men as in people, men, as the Bible would say. That is their own language for them to understand. However, Senior Charles.
I don't even mean the person.
Huh? 1 Corinthians 14, chapter 14, verse 2. I think I'll be able to read the Bible from now, right? For one who speaks in a tongue speaks not to man, but to God. For no one understands him, but he utters mysteries in the Spirit.
Right.
So, that there got me. I obviously don't know, because I was just sort of doing a brief, flick through on it. Don't know the complete sort of
what's that verse in context.
Right, that's what's there. So, here we go. Right, let me see. But, taking that verse as it is saying that someone who is speaking in tongues isn't for man, but is for God. Which is then going into the whole, because there's other verses as well in terms.
Tongue just means language.
In terms of, I forget the verse, but it's like if someone is to speak in tongues, that you may pray that it can be, what's the word? Basically understood, what would be the word? Like deciphered. Deciphered's like do you know what I mean? Translated.
I'm not entirely sure. I need to read.
It'll be translated, right? But that verse alone is saying that if you're speaking like just that one, anyway.
Look, put it this way: God's not the author of confusion, so why would He have it that here's an idea, speaking a language that nearly no one on earth can understand?
And that's where the interpretation comes into play. That's what it's saying about the interpretation.
That's ridiculous. Like, okay.
Walking on water is not ridiculous, but someone speaking in different languages.
Right, so 100 people gather to hear the gospel, and I start going, blah, blah, blah,
I am just pushing buttons here just to see what he wants to say, but like.
And 5 of them have been blessed to understand what I'm saying.
Right.
What is the point in that? Why would God do that? Why would He even permit that? It just doesn't make any sense. It's stupid.
But that's where it goes back to that other verse where you're not speaking to man, you're speaking to God. If
hold on, see, this is the problem.
Because this is something that's came up with before. I was chatting to someone. It's just like speaking in tongues isn't you speaking to the people. It's a conversation between you and God.
Right. Like the apostolic churches have never had this. Right.
Right.
All right. And I know they're not sola scriptura, but they don't have this, and have never had it. So it's not been a thing since the foundation of Christianity. Okay, this is like a charismatic, not naming any other denominations thing, right?
But you know,
and it's people who go to church wanting to see big spiritual spectacles instead of actually hear the gospel and worship. And that is my opinion, and I'm not moved.
Right. Okay. So, here we go. A great website for those if they're wanting a better understanding of the Bible, if they don't understand something, is a website called Got Questions. Right?
That doesn't sound reliable.
It is very reliable. Yeah, it is reliable. Because literally, you go anywhere, like everyone uses it. Like my youth pastor told me to like use this and whatever, and like it's good. Right? So I'll read a wee bit from it, right? And the question for Got Questions is, what is the gift of speaking in tongues, right?
But who's answering?
What? It goes off, it tells you, like it's going back and it's telling you verses from the Bible and like it's saying
okay.
Listen to me, right? The first occurrence of speaking in tongues occurred on the day of Pentecost, right? In Acts chapter 2, verses 1 to 4, the apostles shared the gospel with the crowd, speaking to them in their own languages.
Thank you.
Speaking in tongues, right? Yes. It's still speaking in tongues, right? That's what's called in the Bible, right? The crowds were amazed. We hear them declaring the wonders of our God in our own tongues.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Right? I'm not saying I disagree. I'm playing both sides of the bloody palette here.
No, but the problem is, right?
I'll do what I want, right? It's my podcast. For now, anyway. The Greek. Here we go. This is what I like. I like going into like the actual translation. So the Greek word translated tongues literally means languages, right? So that you can't deny that.
I wasn't.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm saying can't deny that, right? The Greek word for tongues, languages.
Yeah.
Right? Therefore, the gift of tongues is speaking in a language the speaker has never learned or in order to minister to someone who does speak in the language. Now, this is getting back into like where I was sort of, this is what I share a similar value to you in terms of like, understand you in terms of, I believe that it's an actual like speakable language and not right?
Oh well, it's yeah.
It's an actual speakable language that people can actually understand here on Earth, on this planet. I'm not disagreeing and saying that no, what you've said about the whole gobbledygook language is right. I'm not saying that. Right? I agree with you. All right, we have this problem all the time where we actually agree, but we come at from two different angles, and we'll spend an hour and a half arguing, and then all of a sudden it's like, That's what I'm trying to say. And they're like, well, that's what I'm trying to say. And then I was just like, well, I was just wasting another half of our lives, right? Because we're coming at it from two different angles. Like, our brains work differently. Right? So it's like, you're coming this way and I'm going that way. And we're like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Therefore, the gift of tongues is speaking in a language the speaker has never learned, whatever. In 1 Corinthians 12:14, Paul discusses miraculous gifts, saying, now, brothers, if I come to you and speak in tongues, what good will I be to you unless I bring you some revelation or knowledge or prophecy or word of instruction?
Mm-hmm.
1 Corinthians 14. Verse 6, according to the Apostle Paul, and in agreement if the tongues described in Acts, speaking in tongues is valuable to the one hearing God's message in his or own language, but is useless to everyone else unless it is interpreted or translated.
Which is why
you need to pray that it is interpreted or translated. You're speaking in someone else's language. It's easier for people to understand what's going on if you're doing it in a group of 2 or 3, a small group of people. If you're doing it in a large group of people, it is useless. Yeah. Not everyone else understands it. Mm-hmm. It's like, in my head now, it's like you're taking the people that don't understand the language, you're taking them away, and then you're speaking to them in their own language.
Hmm.
Because, as it says here, it's like, the act of speaking in tongues is valuable to one hearing God's message in their own language, but it is useless to everyone else.
Yeah. That's what he's talking about.
Yes. Yeah. If I go into a church and you're sitting here giving me a Kenneth Copeland language, nobody in that church understands it.
Well, that was my original point. It was why would God offer confusion when he isn't the offer?
No one understands it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, to me, in my personal opinion, right? So, I'm saying my personal opinion, all right? It's a get out of jail free card, right? In my personal opinion, I think this modern thing of what is now classed as speaking in tongues is utter dribble.
See, I said that at the start.
Yeah, I know.
But then you had to go and be devil's advocate for the whole thing.
That's my job. Well, makes it interesting.
Like, I don't know. Like, what would you like? Right? Say someone's watching this right now and they're getting angry.
Yeah.
What would you say to them? Like, well, I hear the speaking in tongues, and I seem to think that makes sense. What would you say to them?
So this is where I find it difficult.
Is it? Yeah. I've got a few things I could say.
I don't want to go out of my way to say that you haven't had this spiritual sort of encounter, like, or whatever, or like, it's not my place to say. I can't personally deny that I have, like, you know,
mm-hmm.
I'm not God. I'm not, like, whatever. That might have been something, like, whatever. To me, it looks like utter nonsense, right? However, I don't know what's going on with you or whatever, what's inside you or whatever, like what's happening there. People have like going to these things, and like if you're able to have visions or dreams or whatever, and people have been visited by angels, Jesus can walk on water. Why can't someone actually speak in this other language that might be only in some form of like understanding between you and God or whatever, right? Something can happen. I can't personally deny that. I'm not God. To me as an outsider, and to me looking at this from what I've just read, that is not speaking in tongues.
Mm.
Someone came to me and says, well, what about this whole thing, like being convicted by the Holy Spirit and falling back and all that? And I'm just like, never seen it. Never seen it. That's not to say that it doesn't happen, but like, I don't know. It's like, whenever I see people being convicted by the Holy Spirit, 9 times out of 10, they're in the middle of church or doing worship or whatever, they're convicted by the Holy Spirit. they turn to God.
Yeah, that's better.
Is what I've seen. Whenever I was younger, 2016, I've said this story before. I was in doing late night worship things, sort of worship like after the whole sort of like thing's been gone and done with. It's a late night worship thing, worshiping God. Shivers down my spine, like absolute shivers, whatever. And I fully think that it's like, right, okay, I can't deny what's going on. I turned to me and my friend, we spoke about it, changed our lives, turned to God, became Christians. Then flop on the floor. I didn't start speaking this random language that no one absolutely understands. If I was sitting do that in the middle of church, I'd be getting some looks. People are like, what on earth's going on? My entire life, in the years that I have been to church, right, have never seen that. Never seen it.
Well, your opinion is much more thoughtful, considerate, and to be fair, you've also brought up scripture and run it through than mine. But for me, a bit like how strong my opinions were on the Mega Churches episode, I cannot tolerate this nonsense at all. Right? That's just the way I've always been. That's it. My attitude towards everything. For me, watching ministers get up and just speak nonsense, tricking people into believing that something crazy spiritual is happening. Not the point of even being in the church in the first place. I think all of it detracts from the gospel. It detracts from God.
Yeah.
It pulls us away. It leads us astray. And for someone to get up and pretend that they're that righteous and that blessed that all of a sudden they can start speaking in a language that only him and a couple other people in the room are fortunate enough to understand and have that privilege to understand while everyone else is to sit there clueless is ridiculous. I think there's some real audacity to that. I think there's some real, because like you're not just pretending that you've got this gift. You're pretending that you're like the most important blessed person in the room, to have been gifted that.
Yeah,
I feel like it makes people chase the wrong things. You know, you're not chasing.
People are then chasing experiences all the time.
Experiences, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. That's not what you're there for. I mean, if that's what you're there for, you need to reevaluate what you're doing.
Yeah. And that's going back into these charismatic churches. They're selling you an experience. People are wanting to, like, it's like, wow, this is amazing. I'd love this to happen to me or whatever. And then you go to these big, massive churches, and that's exactly what they're selling you. Mm-hmm. Not to say, and let me clarify here because Chris will shout at me. Not just the big churches. Like, people that are doing this, it can be like any church or whatever, like any church that doesn't have the right moral standing are going to sell you these experiences, and that's what they're there to do. They're wanting you to keep coming back or whatever. No. But going on again here, it would be exercised in the church in agreement with the command God gave through Paul. If anyone speaks in a tongue, 2 or 3, at most 3, should speak one at a time, and someone must interpret. If there is no interpreter, the speaker should keep quiet in the church and speak to himself and God. Mm-hmm. Right? And then there's a verse. If any speak in a tongue, let there be only 2 or 3 at most, and each turn, and let someone interpret. But if there is no one to interpret, let each of them keep silent in church and speak to himself and to God. That's 1 Corinthians 14, 27 to 28. Now, at the end of that, it's saying, like, you just speak to you and God. Sounds a lot to me like prayer.
His prayer is exactly what he's like. That's the first thing in my head. That was prayer. By the way, that's not even necessarily.
So that immediately there is going against what these churches are doing.
That isn't even necessarily talking about a spiritual gift. They're just actually talking about, in general, how to minister to a church when you've got multiple languages. Also, right, okay, we'll point this out. Steve and I I went to an Orthodox church today to check it out. Something very cool happened during the service. Because there is some people there are different languages in that. There's many times during the service, I believe it's something like, not this very long thing that's hard to remember, and it was like, Lord have mercy on us, or, just Lord have mercy. That would sometimes be said 3 times, 12 times. At one point it happens 40 times. And what they actually did was, while they were repeating it, they chanted it in like this kind of beautiful hymn song where it's absolutely incredible. But they would switch the languages up while they were doing that. And it was more so because there were some Russian speakers there. I don't know if there was any other speakers there. There was one guy speaking to actually was Russian.
Yeah.
And so
because it's a Russian church, isn't it? It's the Russian.
I went to there's the Russian one. It's called Rokor, and then you have there's Antiochian one as well.
Yeah.
In Belfast, Antioch is, I think, the first place that Christians actually were being called Christians.
Okay.
That's actually what it's named after. It's
I wouldn't know.
It's the first time. But yeah, so like that is one example of like just doing it more for poetic reasons and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there is a Romanian one in Northern Ireland, the Romanian Orthodox Church, and I think that's all in Romanian, that one.
The church, the service is in Romanian?
Yeah, the entire thing.
Right.
There's no English. There's no English in that one. I've never been to it. So yeah, you can kind of have like little things like that.
When you go, there's no interpreter.
Oh yeah, that's all. But yeah, that's what example you have, like that kind of stuff that's going on. But no, this whole gobbledygook nonsense. And do you know what else is actually quite amazing, right? Because you're seeing like these churches where people are falling over and demons are being cast out in the front row and all. Like this church I went to today, like, you have the icons of the saints, and Mary, and you've got the Lord and that, and everyone's like facing like away from them. So like, do you know the way in a Protestant church you have the minister, he's up, he's looking at you, and you're all sat down.
Yeah.
Well, in this church you stand up the whole time. Now there's places where you sit, you need to sit, you're not good, but you have to stand the whole time. But the sermon, the people that were doing it were actually stood just a bit behind me, facing the same direction we're all facing. And the idea is that because they're actually leading us forward. And so the point I'm trying to make is, and then there's lots of like this kind of like the Psalms, we're reading the Psalms but singing them out.
I saw actually singing
the Psalms, which by the way was an unbelievable experience, because actually singing the Psalms sung, which is what they're meant to be. Yeah. That is quite cool. The point I'm trying to make is this is a very, very, you walk in, it feels very spiritual, very reverent, very formal. And, people are crossing themselves. You've got these beautiful hymns being sung. You have all the icons. And still, I didn't see anyone falling over or casting out demons or talking in these ridiculous tongues.
Crossing themselves is the opposite way than a Catholic cross, though, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's up, down, right, left. For like that's the.
But the main point of sharing that was to say
just to be different.
It's to point out that even in an environment like that, okay, where you've got real reverence, you don't see any of this madness. You'll go to one of these charismatic ones, and it's just nuts. Like, there's no reverence, there's no teaching, there's no anything, and it's just people completely taken away.
Yeah,
this is just turning into the mega church episode. I love running with this.
Yeah. So here's the tail end of what this got questions has gone. This is the tail end of it. It's saying tongues does not seem to occur today in the manner that it did in the New Testament. Despite the fact that it would be immensely useful, the majority of believers who claim to practice this gift of speaking in tongues do not do so in agreement with the scriptures mentioned above. So what that's saying there is they're not doing it the way that it's meant to be done. In the New Testament.
Referring to the Protestant?
Don't know. It's just saying the majority of believers who claim to practice the gift of speaking in tongues do not do so in agreement with the scriptures mentioned above. These facts lead to the conclusion that the gift of tongues is seized, or is at least a rarity, in God's plan for the church today. Right? Closest thing I've seen to that, I was on a mission trip in Romania. Whenever...
Should do an episode.
When one of us say one of us, whenever one of our group was to go up and speak in the front, may that be prayer or something that we were doing. We obviously don't know Romanian.
Yeah.
So we're speaking our butchered English, right? So we're up there doing our best, speaking slowly or whatever. And there's a wee booth in the back right-hand side of this church. Interpreters. People that didn't understand English in that church were able to have headsets whenever they were in church. They were linked up to this booth, and whenever we were speaking slowly, so we were saying whatever we needed to say. If we were reading a passage, praying, or whatever, we'd say a few words, we'd pause for a wee second. These people would interpret for the people that are sitting in the congregation. That, to me, absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. And that is probably the closest thing that I've ever seen to what that is sort of getting to. It's a translation of a different language.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. So it was wise to keep the tongues to the last then.
Yes.
So it clearly had lots of it.
Yeah.
We should have just done the whole episode in that.
Oh, I would have been here all day.
I would have been here all day. Okay.
Obviously, I've read out a few verses there. When I'm editing, I'll try and get them up on the screen or whatever if you want to write them down or get them for yourself. Obviously, I read a few of them out of context, so the way that I might be taking it might be wrong. I just want to throw that out there. But from what I'm getting from it, it is very much put and set in stone that speaking in tongues is speaking a language for the people to understand what you're trying to say. Not speaking in modern day tongue, and what is turned into now, where no one in your congregation understands what you're saying. And if someone is saying that they understand what you're saying and they've just interpreted it, it's like reading from the plates in Mormonism. This is like reading from the golden plates. Like you're gonna get an interpretation, you're gonna get a translation from it, but you take one away and you go back again. It's gonna be roughly around the same story, but there's gonna be a little bit of difference in there. Like, to me and to Charles, speaking in tongues is speaking a different language.
Yep, and whether that's in the form of a miracle or actually just literally speaking another language because you can. There's no sitting down in front of a camera and speaking fluent Romanian when you don't know it.
Yeah.
As a gift, that's not going to happen. But say there's like a Romanian you've met. I don't know why we're picking on Romanians here. And
it's came up because of the mission trip.
It's like if you meet one of them and they would be someone who would be susceptible to the gospel, say if you were able to get this one passage out of your mouth and then you're granted it. Yeah. But again, I would still say that there's a large portion of that has to come down to you being quite holy, saintly, righteous, and all sorts of stuff that I'm not even sure I would know enough to speak about here.
Yeah.
Before you would even dare to claim that even happened. Like, so, and that's, I guess that's another thing that I just find downright shocking about they'll speak in tongues nonsense. It's they're saying, look how righteous and amazing I am, that I've been granted this gift and I can just speak it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Those are madness. So, especially when half of these, like the Kenneth Copeland or Joel, for example, are how much money are they on? It's ridiculous. It's just shocking. It's
sinful. Sinful.
Oh,
it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven.
Oh,
no,
but I mean, these people aren't Christian, so
no,
they say they
are. Like I fully believe that they're just doing that for their own personal earthly gain. Rather than actually going out there and trying to change people's lives.
Wait,
can they do that whenever they're doing it? Possibly. Like, I would firmly believe that whenever they're out and they're preaching or whatever, they are probably changing people's lives. Do they really care about that? I don't know. Maybe not. But, like, to me, if I'm a famous preacher, I'm not taking $2 million a year.
It's
as an annual $2 million a year for annual income. That's including tax. That's not without tax taken away from it anyway. But it's like that is a lot of money.
Yeah, sincere.
Do you, as a famous preacher, maybe charge a bit more money for your services? Well, maybe. Depends on what it's for, right? But do you need to take amount of money where you're living this lavish life where Joel Osteen has a Ferrari? No.
And Kenneth Copeland
has five.
He has an airport.
Yeah, 5 airplanes. No, you don't need that.
Well,
do you charge enough money where you're going to be able to live and you're like whatever, and you're able to go about your daily business? Yes.
Like literally, right?
There's a massive line. If you're getting $2 million a year, get that money could be going 10 times. 1 billion. A 1 billion net worth. That, to me, like, I'm actually speechless. Where can that money go?
It can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You could use it to help people, but obviously you won't do that. Why would you do that?
Yeah. And that's coming out of the church, by the way. So obviously, if the church has enough money to pay him Kenneth Copeland can charge $2 million, which is now going up to 2.8 or 2.6, a year from the church. The church can pay him that. How much money is that church bringing in, and why is that not going?
I actually want to bring this up as well. So when we're talking about this, the Mormon church is terrible for this. So they've like this Quorum of the 70, they're called, right? And they're below the supposed profit, right? Yeah. They're all about 120k a year each. Now it's probably more than that. The profit, I think, is about $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Which is mad, because like, see the Pope's on nothing a year.
This is funny. This is actually funny. I was looking up,
but the Mormon church has like only 16 million members compared to like 1.25 billion Catholics.
I was looking up.
That's nuts. He's making $1 million.
I was looking up their monthly income.
Mormons or
no? Yeah, Joel and Kenneth.
Mm-hmm.
Sound like a Norton.
Just Joel and Kenneth. I know those guys.
Yeah. So like, I was looking at what they were getting monthly. Those two, right, on their own, are bringing in a bigger monthly income than the UK Prime Minister.
That's unbelievable.
The UK Prime Minister is on 80k a year, plus like all the other stuff, like he gets chauffeured about or whatever. He probably doesn't have to pay for any of his food. He gets clothes,
or whatever. Shares and everything.
Yeah,
like, exactly when they're going to go up and down.
Yeah, but like his annual income's 80k a year. Obviously doesn't have to really spend it, like, but 80k a year for run an entire country.
Mm-hmm.
Like probably having to help run other bloody countries that are looking help or whatever, like insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, my advice is: you want money, become a preacher. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah. We'll finish up.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to just sort of emphasize here that this is what we're going off. Personal opinion, we fully expect to be absolutely grilled and roasted for us because it is a touchy subject for people.
And I know, and me bringing up the scenes and stuff, and all of the audience is Protestant, so probably not going to go down too well for me, but yeah.
Well, it is what it is. Like, this is what we're going. I'm going off the verses. Like, if you're upset about it, that's fair enough. Like, you obviously have your own sort of experience. If you've experienced it yourself, fair enough. I'd actually like to talk to you about it and whatever. Mm-hmm. So, if you're someone I know, send me a message. We can go for a coffee. I'll chat about it. Yeah. I'm completely open to this topic.
I would actually love to have.
I would love to be able to speak to someone that has spoken in tongues to come and talk to me about it and explain what that experience was like. If you've got something to say, let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Send us a message on Instagram or leave a comment on YouTube.
Definitely leave a comment. If you have a personal experience that you want to share with us, send us a message on Instagram. Or if you're open, just leave a comment. Next week.
What we're doing?
Next week, what are we doing? Next week, what are we doing?
We should do a Faith and episode.
A Faith and episode, maybe.
We've other suggestions.
Yeah, we've got an absolute list of them. So we'll come up with something.
Predestination, we're going to do that.
No, we're not. I'm not getting into that. I'm not doing that. I'll be here all night.
We'll end up arguing today. Let's not do predestination. Cool. Okay, fine. We'll do something faith and or some theology. We'll do something like that.
Yeah. Maybe even just take a. So what we could do, we could maybe even just take a chapter out of a book.
And go from there.
And we'll just take a chapter out of the book and we'll just talk about that.
Yeah.
And we'll start doing that as a wee sort of segment as well, where we're just sort of going through and explaining what the chapter's about, etc. I think that'd be pretty good, actually.
Actually, yes.
Yeah, and that could be sort of separate. So it'd be like going through the book of John.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'll do that. We'll take a topic. We'll take a book of the Bible. We'll start going through that. Yeah. Don't know which one we're going to go through. We'll have a chat about it, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Keep us posted. Keep us posted. Stay in touch, and we'll keep you posted. I'll put up some shorts and stuff about what we're going to be doing. All the usual stuff, like subscribe, share it, because that's how people get word about. If you didn't like what you hear, then send out a message or a hate comment, because we're expecting one sometime. But yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.